I'm Zhemmie. Welcome to my midlife crisis. As you can see, I am standing in the middle of my axolotl tank with a truly ludicrous number of axolotls around me. I don't know what makes a truly ludicrous number of axolotls, but I figured enough that when I stood in here, I couldn't stop being bumped by them was enough. As you can see, I have gone ahead and built myself an axolotl tank in my Temple of Mental Health, which I was calling the Temple of the Amused Axolotl, but I've actually come up with another name for it because I've added a little more whimsy to the outside of the temple, and I'm going to show that to you guys. First, I'm just going to show you a little bit of the landscaping that I'm done, and then I'm going to actually go ahead and do my little intro about who I am, why I'm doing this channel, and we'll go from there. I've actually got some things set up in the room below me. This is the main part of the Temple of Mental Health, where I've got a bit of a to-do list you can see, and I've got a blank wall, which is going to be my check-in wall, and I haven't quite finished with that yet. But then I also have a little wall of introduction over here with some notes for myself, because otherwise I'll forget what I was planning to say. So let's pop outside and see what I've done since the last episode. We are back at the Temple of Mental Health, which again used to be called the Temple of the Amused Axolotl, but which I have discovered a better name for. I just wanted to show you this landscaping that I've done. So one of the things that is always nice with a build is try and make it look like a part of the landscape, like it belongs there. And I really liked the idea of putting some bushes in and some leaves. I'm actually discovering that leaves are some of my favorite blocks to play with now, or favorite things to play with, because they can really make a outside area like this look lived in. Like I put leaves onto the sidewalk, which I have created this path up to the door as well, and I can put leaves around the bushes to really make it look like leaves have fallen off and have crumpled up. And up here by the temple door, I actually put leaves in the corners. It looks like the wind has blown them in. So it's really a way to make it look very lived in, which is I always really enjoy. You've probably noticed that up until this point, I've actually only been showing you the bottom half of the temple because I've added something kind of special to the top half. It has to do with these copper golem statues I added that you can see are still on the bridge here. But I remember looking at the outside of the temple again. I'm going to be a little careful here, and thinking it would be really cool if there was something to indicate that this was to do with axolotls, because I love axolotls. And I remember just having this thought, thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could have axolotl statues on each corner? And then I suddenly remembered I can. So I also play on a server called Scar World, which is the Patreon server for Good Times with Scar, a YouTuber and member of Hermitcraft, who I would highly recommend anybody check out if they love building, because he has such an amazing build style. And actually any member of Hermitcraft is always worth checking out. But I went back to there, and I remembered that we have a mod on that server called the Armor Poser, which allows me to pose armor stands. I also remembered that I had a mod on there that allowed players to collect their own heads if you killed yourself. So if I caused my own death, my head would actually pop off. Now, why that's relevant is because that allowed me to take something I made for that server, specifically some axolotl heads. So I created a Minecraft skin that had the head of an axolotl. And then when I killed myself, I killed the character in game, the head would pop off and I had a little axolotl head. So I came up with the idea of creating some armor stands to just include some whimsy in this temple and to really bring axolotls into it. So here we're going to take a look at that. So as you can see, I now have some axolotl statues at the corners here. I'm just gonna go into free cam mode here so that we can really see what these look like. So these are my angelic axolotl. So this is now the Temple of the Angelic Axolotl, and you can see that I've created some leather armor that has the colors for these. I've put some fish in each of their hand because of course axolotls are predators. They like to eat fish, and you can see that this is these are some feathers that I used for wings, so I did some additional armor stands, and I was able to make some angelic axolotl statues. And I'm going to be honest with you, I was super thrilled with how this turned out, super happy with the amount of whimsy that it added to this build, and considering that this is somewhere that I am going to be spending time to improve my own mental health, I thought that was really important. So let's just head up to the top. I can show you what the top of the temple looks like as well, and we can take a closer look at one of these statues. Here is the top of the Temple of the Angelic Axolotl, and as you can see, I left my axolotl tank open at the top so that it can stand up here, and also so that I can jump in anytime I want to spend time with my lovely therapy axolotls. And I created these lovely planters around each of the columns up here just to provide a nice, calm, lovely space for me to chill out in when I'm feeling a little bit down. But yeah, here are my angelic cherubic, I guess, statues, and I just love them so much. I think I have actually achieved maximum whimsy with these, and I'm so happy about that. You know, sometimes you make a build that just you tickle yourself pink with it, and that's definitely what I've done with this build. So overall, I am super happy with this temple, and I feel that now I actually have the place and the space to do my introduction. Here we are inside the Temple of Mental Health. You can see behind me I have my to-do list, which I've made to try and keep track of the various things I want to do on this particular world, and also give me an idea of you know, what I'm going to do for some of my videos in the future. You'll also notice that I have a jelly cat in here. I have the fresh animations on, which I just love so much. It's a mod that can cause all the creatures in Minecraft and the villagers and everything to have much more realistic animations, and I love it. You will notice that this is a jelly cat. For those of you who don't know, this was the 9th cat added to Minecraft and was based upon the real-life cat jelly of Good Times with Scar, as I mentioned earlier, one of the members of Hermitcraft. So for those of us who are members of Scar World or just fans of Good Times with Scar, the jelly cat is always a special one to have around. I'm going to bring more cats into here because I just love cats in general, but if you hear some meowing in the background, that's just this guy over here. So I'm going to start. I have my wall over here. You'll notice I have some scaffolding set up here to help me do my introduction, but I'm just going to take through each of these categories one at a time and just introduce you to myself and who I am and what I hope to do. All right, so first category, who is Zhemmie? Well, that's obviously me, but the question is, who actually am I? Well, Zhemmie's a name that I actually picked for myself when I was a teenager myself, actually, and that's been sort of my online presence since then. So I've had the name Zhemmie online for a long time. But just to give you an idea who I am a member of Generation X, and if you don't know what Generation X is, then you're definitely a lot younger than me. But basically, we are the sandwich generation. We're also known as the Lost Generation, and that basically means that we were born at a certain time, and we're sort of one of the first generations that didn't have, well, particularly moms waiting for us at home, but we were left a lot to fend for ourselves, which is not necessarily my huge experience as a Gen Xer, but definitely we are also, as we've hit a certain age in our lives, we're one of the first sandwich generations, so there's going to be lots more after us, but basically that means we are the generation that had kids a little bit later, had a lot of career stuff going on while we were having kids, and now that we've reached a certain age, we're also looking after elderly relatives. So we have a lot going on at a point in our lives when, well, our careers are supposed to be at their height, and this has created a lot of, well, general stress and issues specific to our generation. So I thought that was some good context to have. The next thing you need to know about me is that I am, in fact, a crazy cat lady. I have 4 cats. I would have more if I could get away with it, but I can't get away with it. But their names are Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Padme. And by that, I'm hoping you can tell that I'm also a big Star Wars nerd. In fact, I'm a big sci-fi fantasy nerd. So my previous cats before that were named Arwen and Frodo. So you can see that that comes from Lord of the Rings. I tend to like anything that allows me to step outside my normal life and explore new worlds. So I love those kinds of stories. So that's kind of me. Last thing on this is that I have a neurospicy family. And what does that mean? Well, that actually means that I have two neurospicy teenagers. For those of you who don't know what that means that they are neuronon-typical, which could be things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia. There's any number of kinds of things that go into the idea of non-neurotypical. And during the process of helping my wonderful kids grow up and come to understand what their particular flavor of neurospiciness was, I started to have this experience where I would be talking to therapists or psychologists or people, and I would be saying, wait, you mean that's not typical? And of course, like many parents of a certain generation where it was not typical to be diagnosed with some of these things when we were younger, began to realize that perhaps I actually fit into that category of non-neurotypical as well. So that's been an interesting journey for me starting to figure that out. It's probably something I'll talk about in a future episode because my particular flavor of neurospiciness is not necessarily fit neatly into any particular categories, as many people's do not. So yeah, it's kind of something that maybe I can talk about. It's been something I've been on a bit of a journey with over the last little while. So that's been kind of interesting. All right, the next thing to know about me is why do I call this Zhemmie's midlife crisis? So what exactly is a midlife crisis, or my specific midlife crisis? Well, the first thing in there is, for me, is depression. Now, this is something that I have struggled with for pretty much my entire adult life. This goes along with the neurospiciness as well, by the way, just as a spoiler alert on that one. But basically, this is something that I've been struggling with on and off, and it got in particular bad. I mean, obviously a number of things went into that. COVID being a big one, and the stress and isolation that happened. I was also leading an organization at that time and leading them through that crisis. It got to be a lot. So that's been something that's been a kind of a constant. The interesting thing though is that at a certain point in my life, I for some reason didn't start taking it as seriously as I had when I was younger, and I wasn't really getting treatment for it. So that certainly contributed a lot. And unfortunately, I am now at a point where I'm getting treatment for that. I'm getting support for that. So that puts me in a much better place. But one of the next things, though, in my particular midlife crisis is something that a lot of women, particularly from Gen X, are going through at this point, and that is a divorce. So not because there's anything horrible or anything awful about, I wasn't in an abusive relationship or anything like that, just got to a certain point, realized that I had been letting my own mental health slide and my own boundaries slide, and when I decided it was time to enforce those boundaries and time to start putting myself front and center, it just caused a lot of issues, and I realized that I really needed some time to focus on myself and to figure things out in a way that I just couldn't do healthily within a relationship. So that's where that one is coming from, but obviously that is always a very challenging transition to go through for everybody. The last thing is diagnoses. So basically that's just a way of me saying that, a lot of medical stuff. And one of them actually has to do with this, what I've named this cat over here. And I've actually decided that all my cats are going to get names after my particular challenges that I'm going through at this time. And this one has happened to be named perimenopause. So this has been a big one for me over the last number of years, and something I think a lot of women in my generation are now starting to come to grips with, which is this big change in our lives that's happening again right at sort of the height of all of our responsibilities as we're raising teenagers and young adults, as we're looking after relatives who are getting older, and it's causing a lot of issues. My sleep has been terrible. It's really increased my anxiety. It's all kinds of fun things, hot flashes, night sweats, not sleeping well. It's just been a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. So that that's a big one for me, but also the anxiety, as I mentioned. Depression was something I was kind of familiar with, but the anxiety, particularly the level of anxiety I was having, was kind of new and actually directly led to me losing my job recently. So yeah, that's been fun as well. So unemployment, we can add unemployment to that list as well. Something that I'm fortunately someone who has enough skills that I shouldn't have too much trouble finding something new, but oh yeah, such a fun thing to have to do at my time of life. So that's kind of what my particular flavor of midlife crisis is, and yeah, I'm working on figuring out how to navigate that situation. That all, of course, leads to the question, why on earth post on YouTube? So it doesn't exactly make a huge amount of sense. I mean, let's face it, YouTube is not actually known to be a super welcoming space for women my age, or people with mental health issues. In fact, it's kind of known to be not a great place to go. So this is, though, in fact, for me, a kind of, well, I don't know if it's bizarre, but seems to me like a bit of a bizarre form of therapy. Which is because this actually came directly from something that my counselor kept trying to get me to do, which was journaling, which basically you write down your thoughts and your feelings as a way to really process them and figure them out. You can read it back to yourself, and that can be super helpful for a lot of people, but I was just finding it wasn't helping me. And I think that's because I realized that I actually like to talk things through. I like to hear things said out loud. There's actually an interesting chemical process that happens in our brain when we say something out loud. We process it differently than if we just hear it inside our own head. So saying things out loud was actually really helpful for me, but obviously I couldn't be in therapy every single day of the week or talk to a counselor constantly. So it came to me that, maybe making these videos, saying things out loud, talking about these situations and sharing that with other people might be a pretty cool way of helping myself at the same time. So there we go. That's kind of my bizarre form of therapy. In addition, I also really love the idea of being part of a community. So this is specifically part of the Minecraft community on YouTube, and I've been lucky enough to be part of the Hermitcraft community for a while, and that is a group of people who really love the members of the Hermitcraft SMP, which again, if you haven't checked it out, I'd highly recommend it. It's super amazing. But it's a really lovely, fun group of people, and I actually really wanted to, I found it was actually the first online community I ever really wanted to get involved with and connect with more. And most other communities had not been particularly helpful for my mental health, but I actually found this group pretty amazing. So yeah, it was kind of an idea to participate a little bit more fully in that community. And that leads us to this last part, which is enforced creativity. Now, that doesn't necessarily actually sound that great. You shouldn't actually force creativity. But for me, if I don't do creative things on a fairly regular basis, it really can be very negatively impactful for my mental health. The problem is, of course, that a lot of the stuff that I do for creativity purposes are hobbies. They're things that are not supposed to be taking up the majority of my day, and I found that they were the first things that I would drop when my mental health started to drop or when I'd get tired or other things like that. So in a lot of ways, making these videos is keeping me accountable to do at least something a little bit creative. And Minecraft I found is a terrific way for me to have that creativity. I love gaming. I love connecting with the community online. So I'm finding this to be a really good way to, just sort of scratch that itch and make sure that I'm actually getting my creativity time in, and in a way that's going to be hopefully helpful for my mental health. The last thing I wanted to cover was looking ahead. What exactly do I plan to do with this channel? Because I'm one of those people that I need a plan. If I don't have a plan, I get a little bit twitchy. Yeah, I twitch a lot. So I need to have something that lets me know where I'm going, something that helps keep me on track as well, because if I don't have a plan, I tend to just meander, which is why I made all these notes, because otherwise I'd just be babbling incoherently. But first of all, we've got Minecraft. Obviously, this is something I'm really passionate about. It's something I do a lot of, so a lot of this channel is going to be focused on Minecraft content. Now, I mentioned I also play on Scar World, and I'm thinking it'd be kind of cool to show you some of the stuff I've been doing on that server as well. I thought I'd start here in Zhemmie's Hollow in my Forever world just because it was a little bit more straightforward and I had a little bit more control over what was going on. Plus, I find the server sometimes lags a good bit, which is not really that much fun for making videos. So I'm figuring out a way to try and deal with that. So there's that. Then we also have an idea that I came up with, which was a podcast, which it sounds kind of strange, but I love talking to other people about Minecraft and about Hermitcraft and about the Life series, which is another SMP run by Grian. That's just, there's something about them that have really sort of tapped into my creativity and have tapped into something that I really found myself liking and enjoying. So one thing I did notice is that the community that's sprung up around these two particular SMPs is just really so incredibly nice and really supportive and diverse and really embracing of diversity. And so I thought it might be fun to talk to some of the members of that community, some of the people who make up the Hermitcraft community online. And there's all kinds of amazing creative. There's so much art. There's, animatics that get made from this. There's all kinds of, there's even online magazines and comic books that get made. They're all inspired by this one group of creators on Hermitcraft or in the Life series. And it's just such a cool group of people that I thought it might be kind of fun to talk to some people about what they're doing and what inspires them. Anyways, I thought that might be fun. So it's something I'm going to look at. That does take a lot more organization than me just in my Forever world, goofing around. So we'll see if I have the mental time and effort to do that. But I think it's something I would enjoy. The last thing is this idea of my kids make me play. Oh, this is an idea I had, was, as I said, I've got teenagers, and I thought it might be fun to try and include them a little bit in this, by letting them tell me which video game I have to play, and then I have to play it. And they're probably going to pick horror games because they know I don't like horror games, but I thought that might be a fun thing to do. And there we have it. That's me in a nutshell. Who I am, what's up with my midlife crisis, and why I started posting on YouTube. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really want to thank everyone who was so supportive of my first video. It got a lot more engagement and a lot more views than I was actually expecting. So thank you guys so much for being so supportive on that. I really, really appreciate it. And honestly, I'm just having a blast doing this. So I'm really looking forward to making some next videos. I think for my next video, I'm going to start with a quick world tour of my world just to see what I've done so far, and then I think I'm going to be starting on a storage system. I'll explain that a little bit more in the next episode. But in the meantime, I hope you all find your own good mental health, and I've been Zhemmie. This has been my midlife crisis, and I'll see you next time.